Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Wim de Tooy, Secretary to CEOPA, and I have the rare privilege to welcome you at first and to set the house rules. Just by way of background, you may recall we had a benchmarking first ever international conference on essential and vegetable oils in Southern Africa in 2019, but we could not present the second conference last year due to COVID. And the GQSP SA project and CEOPA consequently decided to host a trilogy of webinars this year, which you are experiencing now. Thank you very much. Today being the second of the three webinars, we're very glad to have you with us. Just a few house rules, please. Should you have any questions, you are most welcome to post them, but please do post them in the Q&A section, not in the chat box, because they will be recorded, and if the panelists are unable to respond to them during the course of the webinar, they shall contact you afterwards with their responses. So please remember, use the question and answer section, which you will see in the button at the bottom of your screen. The presentations will be uploaded on CEOPA's website in due course, should you wish to view any of them again. It is now my pleasure to introduce the moderator for this webinar, Ms. Karen Swanepoel, CEOPA's Executive Director. Unfortunately, this is a very easy task because I'm sure that just about everybody of you know her by now. She needs little introduction. She is one of the founder members of CEOPA, and she has been at the association's helm for the past 21 years, which qualifies her to do what she is going to do now. Karen, if you will be so kind.
Thank you, Wim, and thank you everybody that's organizing this and helping us in this. I'm specifically thinking of UNITA, Dr. Elsie Mankis and Ron and also Nora. Without you, this could not have been possible. But as Wim has said, CEOPA is 21 years old this year, which makes us out of the baby shoes and almost in adult life going to have to graduate one of these days. So we have a packed full program for you that we'd like to share with you. And I'm going to just tell you what is on the menu. I'm calling a menu for today. So it is Ms. Naya Rai Kuribhaseka from Zimbabwe. She's the owner of Castle Natural Oils, and she is going to tell us about her journey and the requirements for meeting the customer's demand. Thank you, Naya Rai, for joining us all the way from Zimbabwe and always being able to share with us your experience. And then she will be followed by Mr. Tafara Shuro. He's from Kobu Essential Oils Incubator from the Eastern Cape. Tafara, you are running a model program there, and we can't wait to see what you say about the strength in numbers and incubation approach to essential and the vegetable oils. Then Tafara will be followed by Mr. Obed Melovolve. He's the owner of Obed Essential Oils in Gauteng, and he was also the previous chairperson of CEOPA, and he's going to tell us more about the lesson in soil and seed selection. Obed is very knowledgeable in the seed pressing of oil and also in the distillation of a variety of essential oils. So we will learn a lot from Obed. And then last but not least, it will be Ms. Nicola Loubser from the Yucca Forest Company, operating in Mpumalanga and Western Cape. A lot of experience that Nicola can share with us, and that will be from a buyer's perspective in the essential oil and vegetable oils industry. So that is in short, and I think we can go now over to the video. Thank you again, Elsie, Nora, and Ron, and Wim for helping us be on this, and welcome everybody to this event. And we are still going to celebrate until the end of the year, the 21st year of CEOPA's existence. So that's it from me.
South Africa, home to 21,000 plant species, sporting many protected biomes and known for its unique flora and fynbos, is the third most biologically diverse country in the world. No wonder then that South Africa's essential and vegetable oils are in high demand in major economies like the United States of America, Europe, and the United Kingdom, with growing demand in Japan, Canada, South Korea, and on the African continent. Essential and vegetable oils are used by flavor and fragrance industries to create flavors for food and beverages, perfume compounds for cosmetics, household products, and fine fragrances, among many other applications. The time for South African producers to export has never been more favorable.
The global market for these oils is huge, and we're still lagging behind in meeting that demand.
Probably a decade ago, South African oils weren't very well known. They have become more well known overseas, and I think a lot of the buyers overseas now realize that our quality is just as good as anywhere else. Efficient, our prices are competitive. So I'm very positive about the export potential of South African oils. And that would be essential oils and vegetable oils as well. And I think we're fortunate to have quite a diverse flora in South Africa. You can't find it anywhere else in the world.
South Africa has the potential to become a major supplier of indigenous, essential and vegetable oils. The way to make this a reality is by ensuring compliance with standards and independent, internationally acceptable verifications of compliance. Currently, only a fraction of the world demand for essential and vegetable oils is produced in South Africa and exported to regional and international markets. With such high potential, what is preventing South African farmers from exploiting this opportunity?
We have faced quite a lot of challenges, and I think the key one has been the quality issues, understanding what quality the customer is asking for and ensuring that we are producing that right quality.
Consistency of production, consistency in quality of goods and compliance to standards and good agricultural practices are key requirements of the export market. Thus, careful control of all phases of cultivation, processing, storage, and transportation of the essential and vegetable oils value chain is crucial. To do this requires a good understanding of the supporting role of quality infrastructure through standards, metrology, accreditation, and conformity assessments such as testing, inspection, and certification. Soil preparation lays the basis for product quality, crop yield, and resource utilization. Soil sampling and analysis can therefore help to ensure that soil conditions are sufficient for crop and seed needs.
But you mustn't think that a lavender's a lavender, a geranium's a geranium. It is crucial that you understand that you're starting with the correct genetic plant material when you get into essential oils.
Then when you do a soil test analysis, you are able to see what the soil is able to do on its own and what you need to do in order to feed it to get optimum results.
We always advise farmers, first of all, what do you want to plant? And then they say, I want to plant this. And then I say, what type of soil do you have? They say, I have this type of soil. I say, well, I agree with you. I will come and then look at the seeds and see the variety that is, whether it is compatible to that soil. But the soil, we must take it to be tested.
Compliance and monitoring of adherence to the required produce or quality management standards, best practice certification, and safety regulations are obviously important.
We primarily are involved in organic production, so we have to have organic certification. That's an annual process, an annual inspection that gets done by an independent certification agency. And in our case, we certify our product to both EU organic standards as well as the American National Organic Program.
Accredited testing and certification services provide the required confidence of compliance to the various standards and regulations. The timing and correct harvesting of essential and vegetable crops is paramount to the character, quality, and yield of its production.
We ensure that the quality of the harvest, firstly, we do training for our harvesters, so they know exactly what to look for. For instance, they know that they won't get like morula from a goat crawl or something because it smells. So that's how we ensure that the quality right from the beginning is correct.
Depending on the crop, the harvested materials should also be distilled as soon as possible after harvesting. in processing and subsequent storage, managing risks such as contamination and exposure to adverse conditions that may impact the quality of the oil produced would be important.
So we take all the factors in mind. So first of all, we look at the product when we start harvesting the product. You don't want the product to stand still for a long time or get mold, things like that. So those are the things that you completely phase out. Then the next thing that you do is when it comes into your plant, you want to process it as quick as possible. The vegetable oils is a little bit different than your essential oils. But with your vegetable oil, yes, the product can stand a bit longer. But on your plant material, like your Electricium or your Artemisia afra, those things you want to put into your pot as quick as possible to process.
Once distilled or pressed, the oils need to be tested in readiness for selling. Testing of the oil quality plays an important role in the ultimate price that would be paid for the produce.
Having your oil tested is relatively simple and straightforward. You tell the lab what you want tested in compliance to your demand, and they test it. If you comply to the demand, the specification, then you're fine. If you don't comply, you can't sell.
More and more social standards with a focus on sustainable farming, the prevention of child labor, the reduction of global warming and other environmental and social protection matters are becoming a requirement for the export of essential and vegetable oils globally.
From Eucalypt Forest's point of view, we are very big on social impact in our area. And, we enjoy being able to tell our clients what we're doing. And it's something that we've always done.
Compliance to required standards facilitate the acceptance of essential and vegetable oils produced in South Africa for export.
The market does require certification. The rest of the world, I think they're going the certification route. They want products that are clean, products that are green, products that have a social story to it, that benefit beyond us as the business, that benefit the bottom of the pyramid, as it were. And with the different certifications, the product or the prices, there's a certain premium that you attract, above the standard selling price. The certified product itself pays for the certification. It's more for us to control the quality. But when a customer receives the oil, they will send it to an independent lab which has got some accreditation.
There is no doubt that standards, metrology, accreditation and competent testing, inspection and certification results play a major role in the crop yield and the quality of essential oils. Ensuring adherence to these required standards means people living abroad can also share in South Africa's rich biodiversity through its precious essential and vegetable oils, generating greater revenue for local producers and making the world a more fragrant, flavorful place for everyone.
Thank you for that. I've set the scene now, and I think we're ready to hear everything that Ms. Mayanai Kurip-Haseka has got to say to us, the owner of Kaza Oils. Her topic is wild harvesting, her journey and requirements for meeting the customer's demand. Welcome, Nairai, and over to you.
I'm focusing on vegetable oils for almost 20 years now. I started off working for a local NGO that was promoting indigenous non-timber forest products. And as part of my work, I had to come up with some products that we would encourage farmers to make from indigenous species as a way of conserving these indigenous species. So in a lot of the communities, they had the indigenous fruit trees. So we would look at products that we could derive from these indigenous fruit trees that would then encourage the farmers to make as a way of earning a living out of the forest. And so that's how my journey started. Amongst the products, we made jams, food products, powders, and some oils. So that's how I started working on the oils. And the oils included marula, baobab. And so those were the initial stages of development of these indigenous products. So over the years, I've developed these products further to look at markets beyond the Zimbabwean market. And then as we were looking for markets, there were a lot of questions that were being asked by the international customers that we had not, of aspects of, the product development that we had not gone into as the NGO and also as a producer who was selling locally, because these were products that were familiar in the local market. So in international markets, there were a lot more questions and a lot more requirements that we started to encounter. And my background is biochemistry. So it wasn't very difficult for me to start looking into the research and further development of these products and to address some of the questions that international markets were asking for. So this is, that's how then my journey began. And once we started with one oil, the customers were asking, what other oils can you offer? And then I would go back to the community to look at what other resources were available from which we could get oils, and then would investigate further to see what the oils would look like, what the properties would be like, and then started to introduce these into the markets. And so now we produce a range of 8 different oils, vegetable oils, all of which are mostly targeted at the cosmetic industry. Some of them have got potential for use as food, but we haven't really focused much on the food market, mainly because I think the food market requires a different kind of, certification that, we haven't invested in yet, because you have to have, produce according to food standards. And then I think food standards tend to be a step higher than what you would require for cosmetics. So that has been my journey. The one thing that the customers didn't want to do was to be engaging with local community people who were loosely formed. They were not a company. They did not have the expertise. And also they didn't have the know-how. So customers didn't want to deal with farmers. They wanted, a structured kind of organization, more commercial. So that's how I then began, the company. And I've continued to work with a lot of the farmers that I was working with when I was working for the NGO. And I've also developed, supply chains with new farmers over the years. Our focus is mostly on wild harvest. So all of the species that we work with are indigenous, and obviously why they occur in the wild. So we only work with products that are available in abundance. And once we've identified a product that has got potential, we look at distribution maps and also assess the status of the resource. If it's not threatened in the environment that it is in, or if it is not under pressure, especially from different users of the product. By different users, I'm not only talking about people. There's also the wildlife, or even the domestic animals, if they are not also targeting the same species for browsing. And so once we've established, all of these things, and we've come up with a sort of balance as to how much of that particular resource we can access, without putting pressure on the environment and on that particular resource. Only then do we go into a particular area to start harvesting. And also we look at our harvesting to ensure that it's sustainable and to ensure that there's continued supply. So in some areas where we've identified a particular resource and we've seen that there are no young trees of a particular species, we try to work with the community to encourage them to plant more trees, more younger generation trees, so that we can ensure there's going to be that particular species in future. So we only work with species that are in abundance and for which they are not threatened, and for which we can be sure that our harvesting is not going to deplete that particular resource. The farmers are involved in harvesting, and to a certain extent they do pre-processing, and then they supply us with a semi-finished product, and then we do the final processing. So we are not involved in any of the cultivation. So for example, with the Calary Melon that I mentioned, where we've started looking at cultivation, we work with the farmers and then we give them training, and we also bring in any government bodies that can assist us with trainings. Here in Zimbabwe, we've got the Forestry Commission and the Environment Management Agency. Those are the government departments that are working with rural people. So we work through them, and they facilitate some of the trainings and assist us with setting up, the trainings for these farmer groups so that they can do the cultivation. And then we then only buy the semi-processed raw material from them. We start with the raw material. We have developed some specifications or some standards that we give to the farmers when we train them in the pre-processing. So we don't work with farmers that we have not registered as our supplier and we haven't provided various trainings for. So all of our farmers have been trained and they know the quality of the raw material that we would like to purchase. So at the point of purchase, we inspect the seeds. And for any seeds that do not meet the quality specifications, we reject. And so we only accept seeds that have met our minimum quality specifications. And then once we bring them to our processing factory here in Harare, we then subject them to further tests in the lab. But the tests in the lab are basic. It's mostly for moisture, and then visual assessments to check if there's no mold, if there's no pests, like weevils and stuff. And then we also grade at the factory level, and then we then process into the oil. So that's the basic way of this checking, that we've got good quality raw material. But there's obviously other things that you cannot visually assess for, that you would only assess once the oil has been produced. So at our lab, we've also got a lab that will then check the quality of the oil for freshness, for contamination, and things like that. It's the basic requirement for a good quality oil, which is standard, whether you've got certifications or not. So that's what I've just explained. And then there's the additional requirements which relate to specific certifications. For example, organic. We are organically certified on most of our species, except for Calary Melon. And so the organic standards, I think that's a universal kind of standard. So we are guided by the organic principles. So we train the farmers so that they understand what the industry requires for organically produced material. And then we are also Fairwild certified for the baobab. We do apply Fairwild principles across the entire range of products, even though our certification is only on the baobab. And so we also have to adhere to these kinds of certifications. We are also working towards the Union of Ethical Biotrade certification. So we are a member, and this certification sort of takes, borrows from both the organic and Fairwild kind of principles. So it's not that hard to adhere to. So for all these different certifications, we ensure that the farmers that we work with are aware of the standards and are aware of what is required by each of the certification. A lot of it is made, I think a lot of the requirements are really on us as the business, but we have to ensure that the farmers also understand what this certification means and what is required from them as the farmers. Usually their requirements are at a minimum. So we make sure that everybody across the value chain understands. The standard that we've developed has been mostly from our own experiences over the years. And some of it has been borrowed from similar commodities or crops. For example, when you're talking about seeds, the moisture levels, I think that tends to be standard for a lot of seeds, whether it's cotton seed or maize seed and soybean, for a lot of grains, moisture levels tend to be the same. And also some of the visual inspections, they are standards that we've borrowed from. And then some stuff we've literally have developed from scratch. From having been experienced with these species over the years. For example, with the marula nut, it is not with the kernel that you get. It is not a whole kernel. Sometimes it's chipped and it's broken up. So there is no standard in the world for for quality specifications for such a product. So you then have to tweak the various standards that are available, and then also the experience that you've gained, and also what is possible at community level. Then you come up with something that is workable. We are at the mercy of the farmer, what the farmer can produce, and it varies from year to year. And there are a lot of factors that influence what the farmer can produce and what the farmer can access. The climate change, as we are experiencing in recent years, is a major factor. Interestingly, this year has been a year that has been different from other years. We've had a lot of rain in the region, which has affected some of the fruiting in a positive way and some in a negative way. But also linked to that is the alternative activities that the farmers then engage in. So farmers, rural farmers, subsistence farmers by nature, they will prioritize their crops. So in a bad year, when their crop fails, they will focus, their attention will be shifted to other things that can earn them money. And that would include our products. In a year where there is a bumper harvest, they're going to be focusing more on their crops. So even if there's a lot of marula, you're definitely not going to get a lot of marula from them because they're busy with their maize, with the sunflower and whatever else they've grown. So we remain at their mercy, really. And also the value that they place on your product will determine how much time they're going to spend on it. If it earns them more money than the maize crop, they might just spend more time on it and give you the crop, the product. But if it earns them less, or if it requires too much time compared to anything else that they find lucrative, you struggle to get, the volumes. But generally, over the years, we have seen a steady increase in the volumes that the farmers would give us, and that has been mainly because of the income that the additional income that they get from our products. So a lot of our products are mainly harvested outside of the cropping seasons, and so this is the time when they don't have so much work in their fields. And also because our products do not require any investment in terms of resources or inputs, anyone can get involved. So you don't need to have seeds, you don't need to have fertilizer. So even the poorest of the poor can get involved. All they need to do is just go into the forest and harvest. So there are no barriers to entry for such a business. So we've seen that, when people have realized that there's a value in a product, they will focus more on it. So over the years, that's what has contributed to the growth. Sometimes we do see some contamination. A lot of the contamination really is usually what we call foreign matter or extraneous matter, which is mainly from either the surrounding or it's from the particular plant itself. So for example, with the melon, there may be pieces of the actual melon pulp in the melon seeds, or with the baobab, there may also be baobab shells or baobab leaves in the material. So if it is a contaminant of the same plant origin, we are not too worried about that. Other contaminants such as stones or animal dung or cow dung is definitely of concern to us, because then it contributes to some of the bacteria or the microbiology. And these are the things that we usually reject at the point of purchasing. So our products are not distilled. It's called extraction or just oil expelling. And most of the oils are extracted using a cold extraction technology, which uses the room temperature. So there's no need to control the temperature there. There's no heating at all. There are some seeds that are hard, like the baobab, and the type of expeller that we use will generate a bit of heat because of friction. The seed is hard, and when it's crushed against metal, there is a bit of heat. With that, we do check the temperature, and the temperature has to be below 50 degrees in order for it to qualify as cold extraction. We're just using a thermometer. So we are mainly using bulk storage containers, and bulk, when we dispense to the customers, is also in bulk. So it all depends on the volume that the customer wants to purchase. Normally, we store in the drums, in the steel drums. Those are 190 kgs or 210 liters. And then if customers want less than that quantity, we use the plastic containers, which are normally 20 kilos or 25 kilos. It's actually 23 kilos or 25 liters. So those are the options of packaging that we have. In terms of labeling, it's not that difficult, because it's mainly just labeling what the product is and assigning a batch number to the product and some information on storage conditions, and also maybe the best before date. And it's generally a computer printed label. It's not a graphic designed kind of label. And it also depends on what the customer is asking for. Some customers have got their own labeling requirements. And also the certification systems that we use also require a certain standard in the information that you place on a label. So we combine the two, what the customer wants and also what the certification system requires. The phytosanitary certificates are not required. The phytosanitary certificates are required on plant raw materials. So if we were supplying seeds, for example, or leaves to a customer, then we would need to have a phytosanitary certificate.
Thank you, and you'll agree with me. What a woman, what a journey, and thank you for sharing your success stories with us, Nairai. We're going straight into the next speaker, and that is now to fasten your seatbelts because we're this time going to go to the Eastern Cape. That will be Mr. Tafara Shuro from Kobu Kobu Essential Oils Incubator. Let's see what he says about strength in number, incubation, approach to essential and vegetable oils. Thank you, Nora.
You for the opportunity and to share a bit of some of the lessons and that we have learned over this period. So there's a few lessons that we have learned that we can share. So Siakolo Development really started as an NGO that was concentrating on community development. And during this journey of community development, we got exposed to essential oils. And the first crop that we were really exposed to was rose geranium. So this project that is now Kobo Essential Oils started as a program of Siakolo Development Foundation. But we realized that two things, that the area that we were in, Case Kamahuk, had abundant water and had beautiful lands. And high unemployment. But we also started realizing the potential of the essential oils itself. So it was a no-brainer for us to, let's try actually get into this and see where this leads us. So that's how we started with essential oils. As I said, we started with rose geranium. So we journeyed this, informally for a while until we decided, let's put a bit of effort into it. Let's have a few hectares of rose geranium. Let's start the process and see where it takes us. So all in all, we've been in essential oils now for more than 12 years. And it really started for us very much trial and error. Even up to now, there's still not a lot of information around the essential oils production in South Africa. So in that process, we made a lot of mistakes. There are certain things that we did well. But as we were starting to really test the quality of the oil, we find that we're producing one of the best rose geranium essential oils, one of the best qualities in the country. So, so how we started was really by accident. It was just when one of our directors went to KZN and he visited someone that had rose geranium at the time. Then he inquired about it. And this person, after a few weeks, sent him some plants through the mail. And that's how our parent stock started, how we started with our nursery and to where we are today. So that is the story. Nothing fancy about it, but it was just trial and error and wanting to try something different. Yeah, that's how we found ourselves. We do rose geranium, rosemary as our main crops. We're doing a couple of trials on different essential oils like thyme, Cape chamomile, lavender. So we're currently doing trials on those. And a trial for us looks like something you plant the crop, go through a whole season, try figure out what kind of yields you can get for the crop, try figure out what kind of quality of oil are you producing, and look at the market, see if there's actually a demand for that oil in the market, and also see if the climate in that area is able to produce that oil consistently and with the right quantity. But recently we are doing a wild harvesting of Tajet oil. So when knowledge is power, they say, and we've had Tajet in this area for a very long time. We didn't know if we could harvest it and distill it until very recently. So now we are doing a bit of wild harvesting of koikibos, as they call it. So it's a bit of both. oils that we plant and propagate, and a bit of wild harvesting. So Kobo Essential Oils is a farming incubator. We are based in the Eastern Cape province of South Africa. And, you know, it's always considered to be one of the poorer provinces in South Africa. And so we come from a very much marginalized area. So we needed to facilitate an incubation process that facilitates entrance of emerging farmers into essential oils agriculture. So what we do is we do farm mobilization, and we go through a selection process where we select farmers that go through an incubation process in Kobo Essential Oils, the hub itself. So, but also the hub has its own production. So for us to be, the idea is very much that we want the farmers that we support to be sustainable, but we also want the hub, that is Kobo Essential Oils, to be sustainable. So in order to realize that, in order to achieve that, we needed to partner with the farmers, but we have our own production. So at the moment, we have about 10 farmers that are working with us, and they supply to us, and we also have our own production. We actually have our own nursery. So we produce our own plants in our own nursery, and we supply all the farmers that work with us. We supply them with the plants that they plant in their fields. We have our own distillation process. So we process all the biomass that comes in through our distillation process. But one of the new things that we discovered in the last 2 years as well is the potential of not exactly essential oils, but the potential that can come out from drying the rosemary biomass itself. So it's a bit different from essential oils, but we have embarked on that. What's important is, number one, having the correct genetic material. One thing that when you are in this industry, that you realize very fast is that it's not easy for a producer to have all the information that is required or necessary to survive in this space. There is a greater need for collaboration. So we work with scientists, we work with experts in the industry that are able to guide us in this process. Because I mean, we planted maize, and maize is pretty straightforward. But when you start talking about the correct genetic material, you may get something that looks like the correct thing, but that's not necessarily the correct thing. So when you collaborate, you're able to go to other producers and say, this is what I'm looking for. And actually go through a process where you can verify that you've got the correct plant genetic material. And there's several ways in which you can do that. But then when we are verified, we then take whatever genetic material and we start reproducing and making cuttings out of that genetic material, and we reproduce that in our own nursery. So that is a very critical part of the whole process. There have been producers locally that have gone through a whole process of understanding that they have a certain genetic material, only to find out when they're supposed to harvest that, one, the oil is not coming out because the material that they have is not meant for that. So there is need to partner with people that know, that they have journeyed before, and saying, is this the correct thing? Or how do I know I've got the correct thing? You visit other farmers and you go through that process. You get some of the oils tested themselves to see if it's got the right profile. So that is critical to make sure that you don't want to waste a lot of money reproducing the plants in your nursery, putting it in your fields, and only to find out that you don't have the right genetic material. Research around essential oils, and there are researchers that are actively in the space. I mean, if you in South Africa, there's SAYOPA that is actively engaging in the space. And I think for a while we even went back to our rose geranium story. There is what they call the off type, and we had part of this, and we didn't even know we had it until we invited someone in the know to come and visit us, which is critical. So the part about visiting other farmers and being visited enables you to be able to have people that will look at and say, okay, but what is this and how does this work? And they take samples and get them tested and give you feedback. So I think you really being part of that network and knowing that there are people in the know, because one of the challenges as well is it's not always easy to access information in this space. I will say that up front. And so some of the providers are quite, they want to keep information to themselves. I don't know if this is just a trade thing or you make sure you're the only one that's producing. I don't know, but I've certainly picked that up. But we are an incubator. So our process involves sharing information. Our process involves empowering other people to come into the industry. We have a bigger view of the industry growing in the Eastern Cape, not just of ourselves growing. So we don't want to have a monopoly on information or anything. So certainly our approach is to empower whoever we can. And we kind of expect that from anyone else that we work with, and we are upfront about that. And I think we have been fortunate that we've had people share their knowledge with us, which we are really grateful for, because as I said, we don't always know it all. So we invite other people, there are certain platforms where we can get things tested or plants tested, where we get our oils tested. We try to use those platforms as much as possible. Then when you do a soil test analysis, you are able to see what the soil is able to do on its own and what you need to do in order to feed it to get optimum results. But what we also realized is, we were community developers. We were not necessarily very good farmers. So what we decided was we needed to get a farmer involved, like a person that actually understands farming, to be part of the incubator. So we've got a consultant that spends 2 days of their time in our farm weekly. So they bring certain knowledge and expertise that really zooms into those areas and say, when the soil test says this is what it means. When they go into reading about the requirements, they have a better understanding of the information better than we do. So we make sure we depend on experts to be able to do that. And also, in any crop that we embark on, we do a bit of reading on it before we start to figure out what kind of areas it thrives. But I mean, what I'm beginning to realize is there's a very scientific, very research-based approach to essential oils agriculture. And one needs not to neglect that side to make sure, I guess any agriculture in general is really becoming about information and how you can use the information and knowledge to succeed. So we depend on such processes and people that have more knowledge than us. As I said, we have a consultant that really assists us in that side of things. Every crop is different from the others. So you will know, I think with rosemary, and when it flowers, when it begins to flower, it's time to harvest it. So that those are just some of the small little things. But generally, you harvest because of the height of the plant, because basically you want to get biomass that you distill. So when it grows to a certain height, and depending on obviously the harvesting method that you are using, a certain height triggers you to get to realize now it's time to harvest. So some it's got some crops, it's specific things, but some is just like you see it's big enough to be harvested, and it's high enough to be harvested, and you harvest it. So that's what we do with the ones that we are working on, and with wild harvest of Koikibos. That's a very, you get that for 2 months of the year, and it comes in very quickly and it goes. When it's ready, it's ready and it's green, and you go in there and harvest, and you have to do it quickly because you only have a 2-month window really. So you do as much as you can, and it starts drying. You realize maybe by end of May it starts really drying up. Then you need to stop harvesting that. So there are a few things that you can look out for, but generally it's the height of the plant. Every client is different. They'll come with different requirements, but it's important to have certificate of origin. It's important to have your certificate of analysis. And for us, we find it's important to tell the story of who we are and what we are about and who we're supporting. And that really becomes important for some crops, for some clients. Some clients will only need organically certified oils. Some are very specific in that regard. There's this whole approach to the climate and how you propagate, how you planting. Are you taking care of the environment, or this is just a commercial thing for you? You're just trying to get as much as you can out of the soil. So some clients are very specific when it comes to that. They need to know how the crop is planted and how that works. So it differs from one person to the other. And generally, we have most of the things that they require because we have dealt with different people at different times. So you begin to come up with a portfolio of the sort of possible certification and requirements and compliance that any client may request. Drying, it's been a manual process where when you touch, you put your hand in dry biomass, it's brittle. The leaf is beginning to break, now it's the right moisture content. But also you get to stages where, if you put it into a drying process for 3 days at this temperature, this is what is going to happen. So we generate a lot of data around that. We try to track all the systems because you also can dry it not using a drying process, but maybe just in a room. So you need to say, what was the temperature during the time when I put the crops in that room? What was the temperature during the drying process? So you generate that data, and that begins to make sense to say, okay, I know at this temperature, if I dry it for 3 days or 4 days or a week, I should have the right moisture content. I put it in a drying process at this temperature, and I keep it at this temperature. After a week or 2 days or day, this is where I should be. It is something that we're still refining. I said we've paid a lot of school fees. We've done both. We've done very high temperatures, and we end up with losing the active ingredient that you look for in the dry matter. So, but it has been trial and error, and I think we are getting to it now, getting to the right process, standard operating procedure. That can be problematic, ensuring that the quality is the same, because with dry harvesting, we also try incorporate, harvesting from the communities themselves. One would want the communities to benefit. So there's an element where now you will have different people that have, that cuts may be cut, some cut too high, some too low, some also cut material that's not necessarily supposed to be in there. So that needs a high level process of screening and ensuring that the distillation process ends up only with what you require. So there is a process there. But every batch that comes in, we make sure it's checked before it's just thrown into the pot. We make sure it's separated. If you end up with a bit of grass instead of the coffee boss itself, we make sure that's chopped down. But we also prescribe the cutting height. So we tell the cutters up front, this is the height that you need to cut the crop at. Try not go lower or too high. And there's always going to be someone who cuts too low or someone who cuts too high. But before we put it in the distillation process, as I said, we make sure that process is corrected before it's distilled. Also, we batch the oils from the same area together. So like now with the Koki Boss, we were harvesting from 3 different areas. We don't mix those oils. We batch them from each area. So if you got biomass from East London in the same area, we make sure that becomes a batch. We got some from the Transkei, we make sure that's a batch, and we got some from Keiskamhoek. And you get it tested as a batch separately as well to see if there's consistency in the oil. And once that is established, you can then see if you are able to mix the oils depending on what you have generated in terms of the actual results. So those are some of the processes that we make sure are in place before we mix the oils, because the compounds or the profiles may be different. In our process, it's steam distillation. We do not have at this stage any cold press. All stuff that we're doing at this moment is steam distilled. So it's fairly easy and it's straightforward. It's a process that we're comfortable with. It's a process that we have refined over the years. And I don't know if, as we develop, we may go into the essential oils that require pressing. Then we'll have to see what happens with that. But at this moment, it's only steam distillation. We try harvest one crop at a time as much as possible. Then to make sure that, we reduce as much as possible the risk of contamination. So when we are harvesting rosemary, we concentrate on harvesting rosemary until we are done with the harvest, that particular harvest, and we make sure it's done. Then we go on to another crop. But there is a very thorough also way in which we make sure that we clean our pots. We steam clean them. We run steam through our pots. Make sure that as much as possible, we start with a high pressure pipe, hose pipe. We just run it through our pots and make sure all the residue from the previous distillation goes out. We then run steam on the pots themselves and make sure that, most of that, if not all of it, comes out. What we have also done is we have two separating pots. So we are able to actually use one separating pot for rosemary and use another for rose geranium. So that also makes sure that the risk and the chances for contamination are managed a bit better. But it is something that needs to be managed. It's something that needs to be done thoroughly to make sure that there is little or no contamination at all, because it's still one distillation plant. We then batch it. We batch the oil. Because we have multiple farmers, we batch the oil from the same location together. So if you have been harvesting from farmer 1, for example, we make sure that oil is not mixed with oil from farmer 2. We batch that oil together because it's the same conditions, same way that, so they should be consistent in terms of what kind of oil that's coming out of that field. But we then take that oil from that batch for testing. Then we make sure that batch is tested. And then, because there has to be a high level of traceability, one needs to be able to, when you're looking at even a 10 ml bottle that we sell on our website, or 5 kilograms of oil sitting in an aluminum canister in our warehouse, one needs to be able to trace where that container came from. So there is a very serious batching and tracking system that we have in place that is able to track it back to the fields. So once that batch has been tested, then we now have, call it scientific evidence through the certificate of analysis to say, this is the oil profile. It is then the oil profile that we send to clients when they request certificate of analysis, and we know it's from a specific batch. So if this client is happy with this batch and happy with this test, then we then sell them the oil that is based on the batch that we tested. That's how we do it. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very, very much, Nora, for playing that video on Tafara. And we're really proud to say, like the first speaker, these two are members of SAHOPA, and we are really, in great honor to be here and to share with you what they've experienced. Our next speaker is Mr. Obed Nilovove, and he is all the way from Gauteng. So Obed will share with us the lesson in soil and seed selection. Obed has got a company, Obed's Essential Oils, but he's also doing the pressing of essential oils. And I've known Obed since the year 2005. So Nora, over to you. We can't wait to hear from Obed.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Really appreciate to talk to you today. Around 2000, I developed an interest into really saying to myself, my grandmother, my grandfather, my parents, they one time when we are born, we actually have to drink certain medicine to make us live a better life or to boost our immune system to accept the differences of the environment. In 2000, I started to really go into the essential oil. We started by looking at what we have and what we don't have. Then we said, no, we would want to make our own ointments or lotions. Then we chose rosemary because it's a common plant. And then whilst we were working with planting rosemary and growing it up, we started really a small patch. And then we met a certain farmer. He spoke to me at length about rosemary, how it can be used in cosmetics, how it can be used in spices, it can be used in different things, also in medicine. That's when I really developed a lot of interest into that. So we went on and started to plant also this German chamomile, Metricaria restuta. We imported the seeds from Hungary and through a certain agent, and then we planted it. In 2006, we started to really work very hard on it. We planted it, we harvested it in the same year 2006, 2007, because it runs in 2 years, but it's one season because it's only winter. So 2006, 2007, we harvested this German chamomile or Metricaria restuta. We tried to distill it in very small amounts, and then we were offered the equipment by CSIR in South Africa. We went on 2007, 2008. We went on to do the same plant, and then we also included again rosemary for other people. We did quite a lot on geranium. When I say a lot, it's because we went up to almost 50 kg of the oil of geranium. Geranium is actually a cross piece of indigenous plants. They are indigenous here in South Africa, but they are not endemic. Some of them come from Zambia. We worked on geranium. We found out that we can really plant it. We did a little bit of patches here and there to really test our work. On that year, 2008, 2009, we went on to do Tajet minuta. Tajet is actually originated in Chile, in South America. And then it is now very much a plant in South Africa. It has actually indigenized itself because it's growing almost everywhere in South Africa and it's doing very well. So we went on to do Tajetis. We distilled. That year we made, I think, about 200 kg, which we considered ourselves quite big. We sold to a South African company. We started to really connect with other major players now. They were in Clocolan, in KwaZulu-Natal, I think KwaZulu-Natal, Freestyle. Up to date, they are the biggest producers of essential oils on Tajetis. We started to really work 2009, 2010. We had a big of a problem because of the American recession, which affected our market, because our market in Europe, and that recession affected the whole world. We didn't really give up. In 2010, 2011, we started also to do seed oils from Calary Melon. We tested Calary Melon. We tested Mafura Butter, which is Trichalia emetica. We tested also Baobab. We tested Marula. So we were really vigorous in that year. With the help of the other members, the help of then SIOPA, which I was now a full member in that SIOPA. We worked very hard in trying to really make things in a much more professional way. I then started to want to measure everything that which I do. I look at the soil, I record the soil. I look at the soil and see why the plant is growing there. If it is exotic, then I would want to know if it is growing in the Mediterranean, is that the temperature that which makes the plant good, or is also including the soil. So we would want to interact with quite a lot of foreign experts who actually gave us quite a lot of information regarding most of these plants from foreign countries. And then we looked at marula. Why is it marula good if we produce from certain provinces? Marula, as an example, we looked at marula. If you go very north from South Africa, and they go very north, which means the Limpopo province, which is quite the northern part of the country, and you'll find that marula there grows very well. They grow big. If there is good rain, they produce good fruits. And then those good fruits, they produce big kernels. Then the yields are high. But we wanted to also to say, no, bulk is bulk, but let's look at the quality of the product, the oil coming from those plants. We found out that a distance from the north down about 200 to 300 kilometers south, almost reaching the Capricorn zone, you'll find that there is a slight difference here and there, slight difference, but the difference diminishes as you go south. So it means that plants grow in certain areas, and when they're in those certain areas, they produce elements at ratios quite different from if you move them from where they are endemic or where they grow well. So we looked at that and we wanted to see whether it is very correct as well with Calary melon. Calary melon is called Citrullus lanatus. It's called Calary melon because it grows in the Kalahari Desert soils. It grows here in South Africa, the northern province, which is part of the very southwest of the Limpopo province. You will find Calary melon growing wild. But the northwest, which is partly, one would say, the frontiers of the eastern frontiers of the Kalahari Desert, it grows very, very well. You'll find it in great abundance, especially in farms, that which are fallow, because farming is like this. You cannot farm in one crop every year. Sometimes farmers leave the farm to lie fallow. So when it is lying fallow, that's when you find a lot of Calary melon growing. Or sometimes it grows together with their crops, which is ground nuts in Venus subterranea, which it grows in the northwest in the sand soil. So you find that it can grow in those crops, or it becomes a weed in those crops, like sunflower as well. It grows as a weed. So we found out that in areas central of the northwest province, the Calary melon produced quite good oil, higher yields, more than 15% to about 23%. So that is a huge difference. And then we also found out that the seeds, after extraction from the fruit, should stay for certain times. But we found out that a year at least is very good. If you keep the seeds for a year, the oil matures inside the seeds. When you press, there is a higher yield, and the oil is of good quality, including the omegas and the polyunsaturated and the saturated oil are really very high. So that we put down, we would say that is the standard of producing marula. That is the standard to produce Calary melon. Now it comes to also essential oils. Tajet will do very well. It will grow almost everywhere in this country as long as the land is lying fallow or it is soft soils like sand loam soils. It will grow. We found out that Tajet will do very well where the winter are very chilly. The rain in summer is above 400 and the soils are deep. We found out that if we harvest at certain times, if you harvest Tajet early in March when it started to flower, it doesn't produce good oil. So we looked at that and said, is the oil coming from the flowers or from the leaves? We found out that much of the oil comes from the leaves a little bit, but the calyx of the flower, which is the ripe calyx of the flower, or it actually produces very good oil. Now, why do we say it is good oil? We actually have set up, though it is not yet a standard, which we are actually working on, is that you need to have better elements so that's what you sell to the customer. Tajet is selling very well if it has got a better amount of or a higher yield percentage of osminane. So we therefore said to ourselves, we have to mark the time of the year to really harvest and produce better osminane. We found out that it is not in the middle of March when the plant starts to flower and make fruits. It is right at the beginning of April. But we realized that as we went on and recording our production and our yields as well as the quality of our oil, we found that the years here in South Africa, I don't know why, but I think maybe it's because of global warming, we have shifted a little bit further, which means something that which you should do at the beginning of April could be much more effective in the middle of April. We have found out that the yield of osminane in Tajet is more right in the middle of April. But in the beginning of April, it rises up almost like every week, it rises up until it maximizes at the middle of April. So that is now a standard that which we are using. And generally, almost every producer, that which I know of, they now know that. So we are putting that one as a standard. So that is that is what is going to go into the quality system. A good seed is, or the selection of the seeds. What scientists or agronomists would do is to look at a plant that which was one, compatible to the environment in which is the target to plant that crop. We advise people, you cannot choose to plant a variety that which is not tolerant to frost if you are in the temperate zones. We also advise farmers, you cannot want to plant a variety that which is not compatible with the soil type. Some plants need acidic or a bit of acidic soils. Some plants want alkaline soils, but some plants have tap roots. They want to go into deeper soils. Some plants want total sunshine. Some plants can compromise sunshine to a cloudy day in 5 weeks, no big deal. So we definitely go into that very seriously. We have found out that, as an example, one of our indigenous plants, Calary Melon, is that it will grow very well in sand soils at a very low rainfall per annum. It can grow even when it is 250 to 350 mils per annum. But if you take it, if a farmer takes it to a place where there is more rainfall, it will grow, it will germinate, it will grow. By the time he goes into his farm, he will be very happy because it will be growing very lavishly. But the fact of the matter is that it will not produce more fruits. If it produces fruits, there will be few. The seeds won't be bigger than the ones that which grows in a drought-prone area. They will be the same size. The oil yield will not be different. In fact, the plant that which grows in a much more rainfall, it will have very little oil as compared to the one that which grew into the hard drought-prone, low rainfall areas. So these are the things that which we record, and we record them because we want everybody to do everything the same and maximize profit. Farmers in South Africa are very lucky because there's systems, there's organization, government parastatals. One of the biggest one is the CSR. There's ARC, Agricultural Research Council as well. We always advise, if I'm consulted, I've been consulted by quite a lot of farmers because I'm a member of SIOPA as well. We always advise farmers, first of all, what do you want to plant? And then they say, I want to plant this. And then I say, what type of soil do you have? They say, I have this type of soil. I say, well, I agree with you. I will come and look at the seeds and see the variety that is, whether it is compatible to that soil. But the soil, we must take it to be tested. But generally, the soil with the knowledge of the plant can be determined very easily. You do agree with me, a taproot plant is a plant that which has got a root which goes down and it doesn't branch. Calary melon does not have a taproot. It has got an anchor. It doesn't mean that Calary melon will grow in shallow soils. That's what we have found out. It doesn't mean that it should grow on shallow soils. You need to, if you plow that soil, which is disking or really ripping the soil, it should be plowed to or rip it for about 35 to 45 centimeters deep. Why is it that a plant like that, which has got a branched root system, needs a deeper soils? And it also grows on sand soils. It is because of its anatomy to arrest the little water that which comes into sand soils. That's what we actually could have determined. But if you were to grow also German chamomile, it is a branch, it doesn't have a taproot soil, taproot system. It actually can grow not in deeper soils, but they should be sand loam soils. So sometimes it is not really saying that a plant by its anatomy, it can grow in this type of soil. It goes with the origin of the plant and its behavior, because the origin of the plant, if it grew up into a desert where there is wind, where there is sunshine, strong sunshine, and then a lot of evaporation of water, and because the soil is sandy, a lot of percolation water just runs down very quickly. Yeah, so those plants will grow with a lot of water. So that's how we advise people. We don't just say, oh, because you are growing a crop of this, and then we look at its anatomy, and then we say, this is the suitable type of soil. Yeah, it's not really like that. We actually look at its origin as well.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Nora, for playing that one. And we will now move to the next speaker. That is Ms. Nicola Laubscher from Yucca Forest, Mpumalanga and Western Cape. They are producing. And her topic of her talk is in conversation with an essential oil and vegetable oils from a buyer's perspective. Both Obed and Nicola are also members of SAHOPA. Over to you, Nora. Let's see what Nicola's got to say.
Thank you very much for affording us the time. For our first question is, tell us, how do you got involved in this essential oil business?
Thanks for inviting me. I'm looking forward to being able to give you some info, I hope, that becomes useful. I've been in the essential oil industry since 2004. I started off in the buku and Tajet industry, also focusing quite a lot on boutique, niche Western Cape oils like Cape Chamomile and Cape May and so forth. Shortly thereafter, I moved to Yucca Forest. Yucca Forest is a eucalyptus producer. So we focus mainly on crude eucalyptus oil as well as fractionated oils. We also produce Tajet or Tagetes minuta. We have 2 farms based up in Mpumalanga in the Panbelt area. They're both about 460 hectares each. And on these farms, we grow mainly eucalyptus dives and then some other eucalyptus species as well. We have our production facility on the main farm too, where we do the fractionation of the various oils. Yes, and Yucca Forest itself has been it's been around since 1964, and it's now owned by Catherine Crowley. She's an owner based in the US. Her family took over in about 2011. So that's just the background.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. Talking about the essential oils specifically in your background, what is your view in terms of the potential, export potential of South Africa's essential oils and vegetable oils?
Look, personally, I think there's great potential. You know, I think a couple of years back, probably a decade ago, South African oils weren't very well known. They have become more well-known overseas, and I think a lot of the buyers overseas now realize that our quality is just as good as anywhere else. We're efficient, our prices are competitive. So I'm very positive about the export potential of South African oils, and that would be essential oils and vegetable oils as well. And I think we're fortunate to have quite a diverse flora in South Africa, where you can't find it anywhere else in the world. So I think that's a big bonus too. And I think overall, we can be competitive with anybody else, any other country.
And in which crop do you think South Africa have a competitive advantage in?
At the moment, I would say tea tree. I know that there's a lot of new producers coming online. So there's a lot more quantities available. I think the quality is just as good as Australian, although I think the Australians will probably dispute that. And I do think that our price is competitive. So that would be one that I think has great potential.
As a buyer and as an exporter, who determines the requirements to which these oils should comply with, or the processes should comply with?
That would definitely be the client. So the quality, the specification, the price, everything actually just goes back to the client. So you have to meet the client's demands, specification, requests, etc.
So in general, then, what is the kind of requirements to be able to accept the South African essential oils and vegetable oils?
Usually our clients would provide us with a spec for a particular oil. We're fortunate enough to have our own internal lab that we can do GC analysis on, and we can do various odor profile tests, specific gravity, all of those sort of lab tests. So what we would do is we would compare their spec against the oil that we're either producing ourselves or we're bringing in. And we obviously have to be competitive price-wise. We have to ensure the quality is good. Traceability is a big thing too, so that if you've got any issues with the oil, you need to be able to trace back where it came from and resolve any issues related to that. Overall, I think those are actually the main things. Quality is a big thing. And obviously, at the end of the day, if your price is not competitive, they're going to look elsewhere. So that's also quite a big role player.
With the increased awareness of the environment, as well as other factors such as social issues, farm labors, etc. Your clients then, is there certain requirements that they impose on, for instance, on the producers that you as a buyer needs to be able to prove that they have complied with those requirements?
I'm probably going to speak more from a producer's point of view in that way. I mean, we do like to buy oils that have a story behind them because our clients appreciate that as well. But from Yucca Forest's point of view, we are very big on social impact in our area. And, we enjoy being able to tell our clients what we're doing. And it's something that we've always done, not because we feel we have to do it, but because it's part of what we do. It's our ethos. And we would appreciate it if our clients, one of our clients, if our suppliers can do the same. And the majority of them do have a story to tell. So I think that's really important. And we do get asked that very often. We also have a bronze EcoVadis medal, which also shows what we've done with regards to environment and social impact and all of that. So we're quite pleased to be at that level as well. So that's also important.
You've touched on the role of testing, the testing place within the verifying the quality of the oils. What role does certification and inspection plays within the process?
It's actually quite important. I mean, we would appreciate it if our suppliers could actually generate their own certificates of analysis or any other lab analysis, because it just helps us to be able to make sure the quality is on point. I think it's really important. Unfortunately, a lot of smaller producers within South Africa don't have access to their own internal lab. So they have to have tests done outside, which is quite costly. We are fortunate enough that we can do some of these tests ourselves. We're not set up to do vegetable oil testing, but we can analyze any essential oil. So that's terribly important. It would just be good if most of the smaller players had access to a lab where they could have their oils checked.
And in terms of matters such as good agricultural practices, HACCP or hazmat or whatever the requirements are, is there any of those imposed on, for instance, the producers and the processors?
We do get asked every so often if we are ISO compliant or HACCP. We ourselves do have a food safety process in place. And most of our suppliers have a similar sort of standard. Although they may not be certified, they do have a procedure or process in place. So it is pretty important. It's becoming more important, I would say, lately than it has been in the last, I say, probably decade or so.
I just want to touch on the export documentation. What would normally be required from you as an exporter in terms of export documentation that you need to prove compliance to whatever the requirement is that your customer imposed?
Okay, the standard documentation would obviously be your bill of lading or your airway bill. Most of our clients would then also request a safety data sheet or a technical data sheet, a certificate of analysis. Another important document, depending on which part of the world it's going to, would be a certificate of origin. That's pretty important if they want to be excluded from duty and all other items. We also need to, depending on where the oil is going to, if it's going to the US, one has to do a 10+2 ISF filing, which is similar to a prior notice, but it's also linked with the FDA. That has to be done 48 hours before your goods actually are loaded, which becomes quite tricky because if you haven't done it, then you get penalized quite heftily. I'm just trying to think what other items there are. There's also, we do a couple of organic oils and we buy in a few organic oils. And it's important then to be able to supply a certificate of inspection to your client. And that now also needs to be done before the goods have actually departed. So those, I would say, would be the most important item.
Then coming to the bottling and the labeling, the requirements of labeling, where does that come from and what would it normally entail?
The client normally always requests, obviously, their purchase order number, and they have a specific product code that they allocate to whatever product they're bringing in. That has to be on the label. Our batch number needs to be there. There would be a manufacturing best before date, weights, obviously. And then if you are REACH registered for a particular client, you would have to put your REACH registration number on the labeling, and it will obviously also be address details, etc. And then if your oil is organically certified, you have to stipulate that too on the labeling. So those are the general requirements.
You have been through the process for quite some time, and you've seen how this sector evolved, obviously, over time, as new entrants and other smaller ones that didn't make it, etc. What do you see is the biggest challenge in this industry?
I think for us, I mean, we're fortunate to be in a part of the world where the climate is pretty. It's pretty standard, you know, from one area to another, but we do obviously have climatic issues. In the Western Cape, for example, with buchu and other fynbos oils, we had a drought. So that sort of natural disaster, you know, it has a devastating effect on a natural product, as it would do. And with a lot of other oils too, if we don't have sufficient rains, you know, it also becomes a problem. So I think climate is a big problem, and I think that's a global problem. It's not just within South Africa.
And in terms of things like seed selection, planting, do we have any challenges in that respect as well?
Not that I'm aware of. We have for ourselves as producers, we have our own seed. We have our own mother blocks where we pull our seed from. I'm not sure if that's an issue with any of our suppliers. It seems.
So I'm a small guy, entrepreneur that wants to get into this particular space, want to start my own farm, and as well as see it through to processing, and obviously want to sell it to you to export. What advice would you give me?
Say the most important thing would be to do your research as best as you can, because you don't want to invest a lot of money in a product that seems to be the next big thing at the moment, and because it's a natural product, the demand or the usage is always going to fluctuate. So you don't want to be stuck with a product that you put a lot of money into and you cannot sell, especially if it's a product that has a longer growing cycle. You know, if it takes a year or so before you can do your first harvest, after that year has passed, you may not be able to sell your product. So that's a big problem. I think just to be aware of that, and also not to just go for products that seem to be easier ones to grow at that time. So that to me is an issue, because you don't want to flood the market with an oil that seems to be a big item at one stage. And when you're ready to be able to put it on the market, it's no longer of interest. So do your research. I think that's terribly important.
I've got a last question for you. In general, concerning the industry as a whole, what is your view and what would be your advice to deal with any of the challenges in the industry as such?
One thing that would be good is look, it depends which oil we're talking about, but I think notoriously the South African industry it's been quite close-knit, and people tend to keep any info they have to themselves. They don't like sharing. It's competitive, and you know, you can understand that. But I think if all the players could work together, I think that would improve everything overall. I think we'd see more support, you know, from government, etc. And I think that would actually help immensely. So just that general networking, people wanting to help each other, I think that's vital.
Ms. Lopes, thank you very much. Do you have any concluding remarks before we close on it?
Just very grateful to be given this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nora, and thank you for sharing with us, Nicola, from a buyer's perspective. It's always important to know what the buyers are thinking and what the experiences are. Without the buyers, there's nothing else that we can do. So I'm at this stage looking at the questions in the chat box, and there's not many, but there's some, and due to time, we can't spend too much on it, but I will also try and get to all of you that did see that. So The first question that was about climate change and whether there was any selection or anything that strategy that from the industry side. And I can answer from my limited experience to you. And that is that more and more research need to be done. There's been a lot published, but it's never enough. And what we think we should do is document all the successes and share that as we go along. So anybody with input and what has worked and what hasn't worked really add to the database. And I think it's very important that we do address that, and thank you for that question. And then there was also one question about the market, how other countries like Colombia and Peru are actually addressing the increasing demand. So I think I'm going to give this over to Nicola, if you could answer that, or anybody else, you're welcome to help us out on this one. Nicola?
Hi, Corin. Sorry, could you please repeat the question?
Yes, the question is, how do we increase the demand for our products on the international level?
Oh, gosh, Corin. I think as long as we can, we need to just market the material. I think that's the main thing, and have adequate certificates of analysis, etc., that prove that the product is of good quality. And I think to be in contact with the big flavor and fragrance houses internationally, I think that would help, because they're basically the end user, and I think in that way, you can move quite a bit of your product. So to me, that would be vital.
Thank you. And I think we could continue engaging and communicating this as well. And then there was one quick question that I saw, and that was for you, Tafara. How do a person then join your incubator?
Thanks, Karen. It's a very good question. We really wish we could take everyone that wants to join. We'll be very happy to do that. But I think we need to be realistic at some stage. We are based in the Eastern Cape. So as I said in the video, our view is really to build an industry. But I think one has to start somewhere. And I think at this stage, we are in the Eastern Cape. That's where we're concentrating. We hope the incubation process can grow into other areas, but we are in the Eastern Cape now. I would want to engage with someone that is interested, maybe privately, and see where they are and what their ideas are. And also, to refer them to other people that may be closer to them that may be able to help them, because our footprint is still really in the Eastern Cape for now, and we're not able to take everyone everywhere else in the country. So yeah, if we can engage off this program, I'll be able to give more information regarding that. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you. And then there was a lot of comments and compliments, and not a lot of concerns except for the growing demand, which Nicola has partly answered. I bet maybe one for you, and that was on how, or are you going to continue to work at the seeds of your Calary Melon, and are you going to share that with us as well? I just cannot see if Obed is still on, and I don't know if he's there or if somebody else wants to answer that, or you, Nairai, secondly, can you answer on that? Are we addressing the climate change with Calary Melon selecting seeds, since that's the one that we are cultivating? Nairai, are you there?
Yes, I am. I think on seed selection, I'm probably not the best person to answer that. What we normally do at the company level is we will analyze the oil if for instance we received a different type of seed, we will analyze the oil to make sure that it does fit into the standard that we've developed for Calary Melon. And if it doesn't, we will advise the community groups. But in terms of the cultivars and the different seed varieties that are there, because the Calary melons are a group of melons. They tend to be variations in the fatty acid profile in particular for the oils. And we've got some that we've selected to be the ones that we accept. And those are the ones that we normally promote with our farmers. So if we did receive anything else that was outside of those, we would probably reject. I think Orbit seems to be focusing more on the actual growing of these melons. And I think he would be probably better placed to answer the question.
Yes, you're quite correct. Yes, I see that. I do see another question from Stefan. And he says there's no time limit to that, but I do think that we could share the information that we have as we get it, and we will keep on adding to that and invite anybody to actually help us in putting this together, as it is really not a one-man show, and it's not a one species address that we are looking at. So I think that gives us more homework and a place to go. And I think I'm going to thank everybody that's been participating in this and all the questions. We will send you some information by email as we see that the time is up. But I want to give the last word to Dr. Elsie Mentjes just to wrap this up for us. And thank you very much again for your attendance. Dr. Elsie Mentjes, over to you.
Thank you very much, Karen, for the opportunity. For the participants who joined this afternoon, thank you very much for attending. We hope that you have found this worthwhile. In quite a few of the presentations, a theme came out, and that is one of networking and sharing. From the GKSP side, the project which is supporting SAOPA in building the industry association, and also in supporting quality aspects to do with the essential and vegetable oil quality for 5 essential indigenous species oils and 5 vegetable species oils. We are also supporting SMEs with that. And apart from that, also supporting SAOPA in order to be able to arrange events such as today. Before we actually end, we are going to be running a poll, which you will fill in online. If you could please give us your inputs as to how you experienced the event. And going forward, I would really, really, really encourage everybody to participate, to contribute. As I say, there are many networking opportunities. Please make use of those opportunities, because it's only by sharing our knowledge and working together that we can actually grow the industry together. So, Karen, thank you very much for your excellent facilitation this afternoon. I'd also like to thank the panelists. We're calling them panelists. You may not know that we had intended to do something much better. But then when the COVID-19, the level 4, this latest hard lockdown hit us, we had a choice. Either we try and do something or we do nothing. And today's event, yesterday, today, and tomorrow's event is actually the attempt to say, let's rather do something than do nothing at all. So we pre-recorded some events, all of the interviews. Thank you very much to each of the panelists for your participation and also for fielding some of the questions today. And may we wish each and every one of you all the very best. And thank you very, very much for being so open with sharing the knowledge that you have shared this afternoon. Then last but not least, I need to thank Wim for all the logistical support behind the scenes, and also for opening today, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And to Nora. And Nora, thank you very much for making sure that all the recordings played without any delays. That was very much appreciated. And then Carmel, who's not actually on the screen. Carmel is our our South African project administrative assistant, thank you very much to you as well for keeping keeping tabs on things to make sure that they actually happened. It takes a whole team in order to put something like this together. It is not an effort of only one person. So with that, Corin, if it's okay with you, could we please ask Nora to launch the poll, and could we ask each of you to give us some inputs? It's very easy to do. Please do participate.
Please go ahead. So I see 5 questions. Please, we encourage everybody to take part. Can anybody report on how far we're doing with the poll?
Sorry, Corin, can you not see the progress on your side?
No, I can't see the progress. I only see the questions. So sorry about that.
Okay, allow me to just report back. We have 24 out of 27, 25 now. 92% participation so far. I think let's give it another 10 seconds. One more, if one person more would like to enter. Okay, I think let's, Nora, can we end the poll, please, and display the results? Thank you very much. So, Corin, can you see the screen now?
Yes, that I can see. Yes, I can see.
Perhaps you just quickly want to run through it.
Sure. Then it looks like 50% of us said that the information was new, and it looks like almost nobody said that it wasn't new, which is I think a good one. And then 96% said that they'd like to learn more about the topic, which is quite good, and only 4% said no. For question 3, how did the session compare? It looks like 68% said good, 24% said excellent, and then 8% said fair. For question 4, the rating of the overall session evaluation to take home of the value, 24% said excellent, 64% said good, 12% fair. And then for the last question, the overall experience for the pre-recorded methodology, and that was 20% said excellent, 68% said good, and we've got 12% for fair. So thank you very much for everybody that participated. It's always good to know, to get feedback of this kind. I really appreciate you participating in this. And I see that we have dropped down the numbers, but I really appreciate those of you that have stayed until now. So over to you, Elsie, for a closing note.
Okay, I think thank you very much for giving us this feedback. It will certainly help us in preparing for any future events. This was very valuable input from you. Should you have additional comments, please do not hesitate to send them to Karen or to Vim, and we will, or not we, the royal we, yes, we will. We will see how we can accommodate and improve on the service offerings of these events. And then we would really like to encourage you to come back tomorrow for the final installment, which I can assure you is going to be even more knowledge sharing than what we experienced today. So thank you very much. Until we meet again, please stay safe and have a good evening. Goodbye all.
Thank you, Elsie, and goodbye. Stay safe, everybody. See you tomorrow. Thanks again for attending. Thank you, Nora. Thank you, Vim. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.